I woke up in a hospital bed, still hooked to machines, and found out my wife had emptied our entire savings account while I was unconscious. Her message read, "After everything I've put up with, I earned this." I didn't reply with anger or words, just a single thumbs up emoji. That's how Olivia ended our 17-year marriage, not with a conversation, but a transaction. My name is Marcus Keaton. I'm 48 years old and spent my life hauling steel across the Rust Belt to give her comfort she never appreciated. While I was flatlining in a Denver ICU, she was starting a new life with my best friend Tyler. And I didn't go home. Being a long-haul driver wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. For over 2 decades, I crossed state lines hauling freight across Nebraska, Kansas, and deep into West Texas. I wasn't chasing glory, I was building a life Olivia could feel secure in. She never liked the noise, the hours, or the loneliness. Still, I figured the granite countertops and spa weekends made up for my absence. I kept telling myself I'd slow down next year, but the following year never came. Instead, my chest kept tightening, dull pressure at first, then a stabbing that wouldn't quit. I brushed it off as fatigue, stress, and bad gas station coffee. That was until mile marker 218 on I-70, just west of Lyman, Colorado, when everything inside me went black. I managed to hit my hazard lights before collapsing against the wheel. I don't remember much after that, just the sound of rotors and a nurse yelling, "He's crashing!" They flew me by chopper to St. Luke's Trauma Center in Denver. Turns out, it wasn't indigestion, my heart had gone into full-blown failure. I flatlined twice. Twice. The doctor later said I wouldn't have made it if I'd waited even 10 more minutes. I should have died that day. Instead, I woke up 48 hours later with a stent in my chest, an oxygen mask strapped to my face, and a phone notification that would end everything I thought I knew about my life. I met Olivia in the middle of nowhere, a diner off Route 41 outside Lafayette, Indiana. She was a waitress with tired eyes and a laugh that made me forget how long I'd been on the road. Her tire was flat in the parking lot. I changed it without thinking. Grease on my jeans and sweat on my brow. She looked at me like I'd just saved her world. It's funny how that same look eventually fades, not with a bang, but with a shrug. 6 months later, we were married. Quick, but not careless. I was 30, she was 28. Both of us had seen enough to know what we didn't want, but still naive enough to believe love could outrun distance. Initially, she was proud of me, of what I did, the miles I conquered, the money I brought home. She'd brag to her friends that her man kept America moving. I'd call her from motel rooms in Arkansas, Missouri gas stations, and Idaho diners. We'd talk for an hour, sometimes 2, about nothing really, but it meant something. Over time, those calls turned into check-ins. 5 minutes, then just texts. Made it to Tulsa. All good in Salt Lake, I told myself. She was busy. The truth? She was drifting, and I was too worn down to notice. She stopped asking when I'd be home. I started going on girls' weekends, which I never heard about until the last minute. I'd find receipts from spas in cities I'd never been to. Strange charges on our statements, I assumed, were errors. But the red flags weren't waving. They were screaming, and I was too focused on keeping our life afloat to hear them. The last real conversation we had was 3 months before the heart attack. She asked if I ever thought about doing something else. Something safer, she said. I thought she meant for my health. Maybe she meant for her freedom, I said. Eventually, she just nodded, barely looking up from her phone. In hindsight, that wasn't a conversation. It was a warninga signal I missed entirely. While I was out chasing paychecks and beating deadlines, Olivia was already somewhere else mentally, emotionally, maybe even physically, probably with Tyler. I was discharged from the hospital 2 days after flatlining, not healed, not ready, just medically stable. They told me to rest, avoid stress, and take 6 weeks off the road. But where the hell was I supposed to go? The home I paid for didn't feel like mine anymore. The woman I trusted had emptied our account and vanished into radio silence. So, I made a call I hadn't made in over a year. My brother Nate, same blood, different lives. He answered on the second ring. "You okay?" he asked. "Not really," I said. "I need a place to crash, and I need you not to tell Olivia." There was a long pause, then just, "Come over." He lived across the state in Cedar Rapids. The construction foreman divorced twice, and he was the kind of guy who always saw things before I did. He didn't ask questions when I showed up at his door. Still bruised and bandaged, they helped me into the guest room and handed me a ham sandwich. It tasted like cardboard. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and replayed every moment I'd ignored. Olivia's new passwords, her late-night texts, her sudden obsession with transferring money between high-yield accounts. On the third day at Nate's, I got a message from our old neighbor, Greg. Simple, direct. "Everything okay? I saw a guy with Olivia at your house. Thought you should know." I didn't respond. I just stared at the screen. There it was, confirmation. Not suspicion, not insecurity. Proof. Something inside me clicked. I wasn't just betrayed financially. I was being erased. Replaced. While I was fighting for my life, Olivia was setting up hers with someone who used to barbecue in my backyard. And I realized this wasn't impulsive. This was coordinated, cold, precise. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I dressed, walked to the nearest bank, not our usual branch, and asked to speak with someone in fraud. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. I walked into the downtown branch of First Union wearing the same jacket I'd passed out in 3 weeks earlier. Cleaner now, but still heavy with the memory. I asked to speak to someone in fraud and kept my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding. When the woman at the desk saw the screenshot Olivia had sent, the one with our joint account balance at 0, she didn't flinch, but her eyes shifted just slightly. "Mr. Keaton," she said, "since it's a joint account, your wife had legal access. But given your medical condition, we can open an investigation into potential financial abuse." That word abuse clung to me like smoke. I gave her my hospital records, the proof of my heart failure, and the exact hours I was unconscious. I didn't just want an apology from the system. I wanted accountability. That afternoon, I made 3 calls. I will send a formal request to my dispatcher for medical leave. Another was to the credit union, where I kept an old business account that Olivia never bothered with. And the third, the most important to a lawyer Nate knew from his last divorce. Elijah Rowe. Civil litigator. Quiet demeanor. Razor sharp. Elijah met me at Nate's place the next morning with a yellow folder under his arm. I told him everything. No drama. Just facts. He listened, then leaned forward. "Given what you've told me, and that your name alone is on the refinance deed, you may have a stronger position than you think." I spent the rest of the day combing through accounts Olivia didn't know existed. Small investments I'd made over the years, a utility ETF, some old trucking stock, even a high-yield CD from a Wisconsin bank I'd forgotten about. I wasn't hiding anything. I just never brought it up because she never asked. She didn't care how the money was made, only how it was spent. That night, a text came through. Not from Greg, not from Nate, from Olivia. "Where are you? Your truck's not at the depot. Did someone tell you I came by?" I didn't respond. She'd made her move. Now, it was my turn, and I wasn't going to waste it. The next morning, I sat at Nate's kitchen table across from Elijah Rowe, the attorney with the deadpan voice and eyes that didn't miss a thing. He slid a stack of forms across the table, each a stepping stone toward reclaiming what Olivia tried to erase. "You refinanced the house 3 months ago, correct?" he asked. I nodded. "Just your name on the deed?" Another nod. "And you were medically incapacitated during the withdrawal?" I handed him the ICU paperwork. "Then we have leverage," he said without blinking. "A judge won't look kindly on someone draining assets from an unconscious spouse." That sentence hit me harder than the hospital monitors ever did. Elijah filed a motion for an emergency financial injunction that same afternoon. By then, Olivia had texted me again. "This is getting out of hand, Marcus. We need to talk. Just you and me. No lawyers." I didn't reply. Every message she sent went straight to Elijah now. No emotion, no contact, no cracks. This wasn't a marriage anymore. This was war. And I wasn't fighting with fists. I was fighting with facts. In the meantime, Elijah pulled public records, subpoenaed bank statements, and looped in Megan, Nate's daughter, who was interning at a local credit union. Bright, sharp, focused. She volunteered to help quietly dig. And what she found changed everything. A bank account in Olivia's name was opened 18 months earlier. Recurring deposits always just under $10,000 were made only when I was on the road. That wasn't just sneaky. That was deliberate, structured. Criminal? Maybe not yet. But exploitative? Absolutely. I sat there in stunned silence, staring at the numbers like they were coordinates on a battlefield I'd been too blind to see. "She's been preparing to leave you for a long time," Elijah said, tapping the page. "The only question is, did she ever think you'd fight back?" I looked up. She's about to find out. 2 weeks after we filed the emergency injunction, I walked into the courthouse with a suit that didn't quite fit, a heart still recovering, and a fire in my chest that no medication could numb. It was my first time seeing Olivia since the hospital, and she didn't flinch. She sat beside Tyler, my former best friend turned partner in betrayal. Both of them dressed like they were headed to a real estate closing, confident, composed, cold. Madison Clark's lawyer was known for her scorched earth style, the kind of woman who didn't just take your assets. She'd try to take your dignity with them. Elijah and I sat across the aisle. He flipped through a binder while I stared straight ahead, refusing to make eye contact with the people who'd gutted me, while I lay unconscious. The hearing wasn't a trial, just a motion to freeze the joint funds Olivia had drained. But it felt like war. Judge Holloway entered without a word, robe swaying, glasses perched low on his nose. He looked like someone with no patience for games, exactly what I needed. "Miss Clark," he said, eyes narrowing at the motion file. "Your client withdrew over $74,000 from the couple's shared accounts during a period when Mr. Keaton was hospitalized for a major cardiac event. Do you dispute this timeline?" Clark stood. "No, Your Honor. But my client had every legal right to those funds as a joint account holder. Furthermore, she was under significant emotional distress at the time. She believed her marriage was deteriorating and acted to protect herself financially." Holloway adjusted his glasses. Protect herself from whom? A man with a failing heart and zero ability to move funds, let alone manipulate them. There was a long pause. Olivia whispered something to Clark. Then came the deflection. "Mr. Keaton had recently refinanced the marital home in his name alone," Clark said, "without informing my client. We believe that was the first act of financial concealment. And that, I'm not discussing the house right now," the judge interrupted. "We'll get to that in due time. Right now, I'm concerned with the funds. Was your client aware that Mr. Keaton was unconscious when she made the withdrawal?" "Yes," Clark admitted. "But, no buts," Holloway snapped. "We are not talking about standard marital disagreements. We're talking about a man who nearly died, and a spouse who responded to that crisis by emptying every cent they had." He shuffled the paperwork and signed something without looking up. "All accounts listed in this filing are to be frozen immediately. Neither party may access or transfer funds until the divorce proceedings establish rightful ownership. This court will consider punitive actions if additional withdrawals or asset shifts are discovered." That was it. Bang of the gavel. Temporary justice, but justice nonetheless. As we stood to leave, Olivia reached for me. Not physically, just a glance, soft and pleading, like I was supposed to understand something unsaid. But I didn't, and I wouldn't. Madison held her client firmly and whispered, "Let it go." Outside, Elijah exhaled for the first time all day. "That could have gone sideways," he said. "But it didn't. Judge Holloway doesn't play. That's good for us." We walked down the courthouse steps, my legs still stiff from weeks of recovery, my mind racing. I had just watched a judge freeze the funds my wife tried to steal. And for the first time since the ICU, I felt like I could breathe without flinching. Back at Nate's that night, I sat in the dark with a legal pad in my lap. I wasn't listing assets or calculating losses. I was sketching the beginning of my comeback. Not out of spite. Not for revenge. But to remind myself, I still existed, that I still had choices, and that no matter how much she took money, trust, and years, she didn't get the last word. Not anymore. 1 week after the hearing, Elijah called me into his office. When I walked in, he didn't offer coffee or small talk, just slid a folder across the desk with a look that said, "This changes everything." Inside was a bank statement from an account I'd never seen before. Olivia's name is on it. The balance? $127,000 and change. Where the hell did this come from? I asked. Elijah didn't answer. Megan did. She entered the room with her internship badge still clipped to her blazer. "I found it," she said, calm and clear. "It's real. It opened 18 months ago under her maiden name. Regular deposits. Always under $10,000, just below the federal reporting threshold." She let that sink in. She was hiding money from you, Marcus. Systematically. Quietly. Over a year and a half. My hands curled into fists. Elijah leaned forward. "And it gets worse. The deposit dates line up almost exactly with your long-haul schedule. She moved money when you were on the road." My throat tightened. "She wasn't planning to leave me," I said quietly. "She was preparing in case I ever left her." I wanted to believe that, but I didn't. Then Elijah pulled out another document, a hotel receipt from Minneapolis, dated 3 months ago. I was in Spokane that week. The name on the reservation? Harold Benton. I stared at the name, not breathing. Harold. The same Harold who helped us rebuild the deck, who grilled ribs with me every 4th of July, who called me brother. He wasn't just her backup plan, he was her partner. While I was hauling freight to keep our lives afloat, he kept her warm in boutique hotels. Elijah's voice cut through the silence. "They weren't sloppy, Marcus. This was planned. Controlled." My voice came out like gravel. "What do we do now?" He didn't hesitate. "Now, we burn the mask. We expose them both legally, strategically, thoroughly." I looked down at the folder in my lap, lies wrapped in print, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Not because I was okay, but because I finally knew exactly who I was fighting. After the truth about Olivia and Harold detonated like a grenade across my sense of reality, I didn't spiral. I calculated. I spent the next few days at Nate's house like a man, rewiring his entire brain. I didn't rage. I documented. Every receipt, every transfer, every odd weekend Olivia had claimed was for self-care, now had context, and I was turning it into ammunition. Harold had become quiet since the court hearing, but I wasn't fooled. That man was prepping for an exit, and I had no doubt Olivia was going with him. I started walking the perimeter of the house I no longer lived in but still legally owned. I took photos of the new shed Harold helped us build last summer, materials paid for with my money and installed while I was 3 states away. Captured the landscaping, thousands of dollars in stonework and lighting that had somehow appeared while I was hauling steel across Indiana. Every nail, every blade of grass leverage. I sent it all to Elijah with one word. Documented. 2 days later, his phone lit up with an offer from Madison Clark, Olivia's lawyer. Suddenly, they were willing to return half of the withdrawn funds in exchange for 50% equity in the house. "They're testing us," Elijah said, smirking, "seeing if we'll settle cheap." "What's our response?" I asked. Silence. Let them sweat. While they squirmed, I made another call, this time to my trucking company's HR department. I'd paid into their private disability insurance plan for over 2 decades and never used it. When I explained my heart condition and handed over the doctor's letter, they confirmed I qualified for 60% of my average salary, paid out monthly for up to a year. Another stream of income Olivia had no idea existed and wouldn't be included in any division of assets. I filed the paperwork that afternoon. The following week, I had Nate drive me past Harold's place to see. A bright red, for sale sign had popped up on his front lawn like a warning flare. "He's cutting and running," Nate muttered. I nodded once. "Call Megan." An hour later, Megan confirmed what I already suspected. Harold had emptied his accounts 2 days earlier, close to $90,000 in cashier's checks. Not a withdrawal. A clean sweep. I called Elijah immediately. "We need to move now." He didn't miss a beat. "Tomorrow morning, I'm filing an emergency motion. We're freezing everything before they disappear for good." The morning of the injunction hearing felt different, like something final was about to snap. At 1:30 p.m., I walked into the courthouse wearing the same gray tie I used to keep in my glove box for funerals. This time it wasn't for mourning. It was for closure. I spotted Olivia and Harold in the parking lot before they saw me. They were arguing, hands flying, faces tense. I stood far back and hit record 30 seconds of grainy cell phone footage. There was no audio, but their body language screamed guilt. Elijah met me at the doors. "Perfect timing," he said, glancing at the video. "Judge Reynolds is in no mood today." It was just the 4 of us inside his chambers. Elijah, Olivia, and Madison Clark. Harold wasn't allowed in. He wasn't a party to the divorce. The judge reviewed the file silently and then turned the monitor toward us. My footage played on a loop. Olivia flinched. Madison stiffened. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Miss Clark," he said, voice dry, "would you care to explain why your client has testified under oath that she has no ongoing relationship with Mr. Benton when this video suggests otherwise?" Madison opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "It's not just about infidelity," the judge continued, turning to Olivia. "It's about deception layered on top of financial misconduct. You moved significant funds and opened secret accounts, and now we see you attempting to exit the county with someone you've claimed to have no connection with." Olivia's face drained of all color. Judge Reynolds leaned back. "Effective immediately, all assets tied to Miss Keaton and Mr. Benton will be frozen. Neither party may liquidate property, transfer funds, or leave the jurisdiction without this court's permission." He wasn't done. "Furthermore, due to Mr. Keaton's medical vulnerability at the time of the account withdrawals and the pattern of financial concealment, I am granting temporary exclusive use of the marital residence to Mr. Keaton." Madison tried to object, but the judge raised a hand. "Spare me. You're lucky I'm not referring this for criminal charges." As we stood to leave, Olivia looked at me for the first time in weeks. Looked at me, not with defiance, not with cold calculation, but with something that almost looked like fear, not of me, of consequences. And just like that, I knew the tide had turned. Not because I shouted, but because I outlasted the silence. 3 months after the final hearing, I moved back into my house. Not because I wanted to reclaim old memories, but because I needed to close the door on them appropriately. Olivia never stepped foot inside again. Harold had vanished, sold his place, drained his accounts, and disappeared into whatever shadow he came from. The divorce was finalized faster than anyone expected. No appeals. No drawn-out fight. Just signatures, silence, and the gavel's final echo. The judgment was clear. I kept the house, my truck, and 80% of our remaining assets. Olivia got her car, a portion of what was left, and her share of the secret account, only after my legal fees were deducted. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I stood still in the living room the day I got the keys back and exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for years. 6 months later, I sold the house. Too many ghosts in the drywall. There are too many echoes in the floorboards. I bought a smaller place closer to Nate and Megan. Something modest, quiet, mine. I gave Megan a portion of the proceeds to help with law school. She earned it. That girl saw through walls that people thought were unbreakable. She's going to make one hell of an attorney. I don't drive long haul anymore. My heart can't take the stress. Frankly, neither can my soul. These days I work dispatch at a regional outfit 8 to 4. Home for dinner. No motels. No midnight highways. It's not flashy, but after everything I've seen, Peace is the most luxurious thing I've ever known. People ask me sometimes if I'm angry. Suppose I'd go back and undo it all. The truth? I'm not angry anymore. I was. God, I was. But anger is heavy, and it doesn't change anything. What Olivia and Harold did broke something in me. But that break made space for something better. Last week, I was cleaning out a closet and found our wedding album. My first instinct was to throw it out, but I didn't. I put it back on the shelf, because that chapter, as bitter as it was, is still part of the story. It's not who I am, but it's who I was. And there's a kind of strength in remembering, not to dwell but to rise. In the end, Olivia didn't take everything from me. She gave me something too, a reason to start over, and this time, on my terms. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that betrayal doesn't just break your heart, it breaks the version of yourself you thought was safe. The man I was before the heart attack. He believed loyalty was protection, that silence was strength, that sacrifice was love. But survival taught me otherwise. It taught me that the people closest to you can be the ones who cut the deepest, not out of malice, but out of entitlement. And that silence, when used too long, becomes permission. I used to think walking away meant failure. Now I know it means freedom. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't fight louder, but walk quieter with your head held high, your dignity intact, and your evidence in order. I didn't win because I was ruthless. I won because I refused to stay invisible. If you're watching this and in a place where everything feels like it's falling apart, hear me say, you are allowed to rebuild. You are allowed to protect your peace. You can outgrow those who thought they'd always have the upper hand. And when they tell you, you're overreacting, bitter, or unforgiving, smile. Because the truth is, you're not stuck. You're awakening. And that kind of clarity, that's something no one can take from you.